Hello everybody and welcome back to Lap of the World and to Palm Beach International Raceway. This video is mainly intended to show some reference laps for help learning the track before you might go and drive it yourself, if in fact you are able to make it down to Florida before PBIR sadly closes after April 23rd, as it appears will happen. First things first, title implications aside, there is no quote-unquote racing in this video. This was simply two drivers in cars of similar pace having some fun in an HPDE group. Any passing was done via acknowledged point buy, and this group allowed passing anywhere. With that said, I think this is a fun comparison, so let's look at these cars separated by, I don't know, 10 or so years in production, but probably only a second or so in lap time. In the black and gold livery, we have the all too familiar on this channel 1992 NA1 Acura NSX. 307,000 miles on the odometer, and last I checked, about 267 horsepower at the wheels, weighing a little under 3,000 pounds with me in it, riding on KW suspension and shod with Falcon Azenas RT 660s in sizes 215 front and 255mm rear. In the black and red livery this time, we have a 986 Boxster S of unknown year, somewhere between 99 and I think 2003 or 4. Mileage unknown, normally 260 horsepower at the crank, but I'm told this one is a little spicier after a rebuild. Quoted curb weight of around 2,900 pounds, shod with some kind of track day tire. If you're the driver or owner of this Boxster, I enjoyed chasing you around PBIR and hope you'll feel free to chime in with any details or modifications that I missed. But let's get to the driving. We first encounter our Boxster friend midway through the first session when I caught up to him on account of some traffic. From experience, I would expect to be matched on handling, but to pull in a stock 986S down the straights, especially approaching terminal velocity given the NSX's marginal power advantage and slippery profile, VTEC yo and all that. Speaking of VTEC, as we close in on this S2000 up here, always nice to see another Honda Acura product out having fun. We're on what I would call the old section of PBIR at this point. Prior to 2008, this track was known as Moroso Motorsports Park, or at least for a decent amount of time it was, back to I think 1981, and it was laid out a little bit differently. This Martin Fake redesign was done to, I think, both improve safety as well as allow the newly re-anointed PBIR to use all three of its tracks at the same time: the drag strip, the road course, and the karting track. Prior to 2008, this was the layout. You can see using kind of the shutdown lanes and then some of the return lanes for the drag strip, and then circling back through the staging area to complete a lap. Whereas the modern version here completely bypasses or does not use any part of the drag strip in its lap. Unfortunately, that's kind of given us this last turn here, which is probably one of the more painful turns that I dealt with, although if you did it right, the exit was kind of rewarding. You get on that late apex there, you can kind of straight line through here and get all the way back on the gas pretty early, which was, I don't know, it was good fun. Again, the entry to that with the NSX kind of has a tendency to, or my NSX, the way I have it set up, it tends to not like those long tightening turns, but you can make it work. A little bit of not too enthusiastic, trail braking and some lift throttle, you can tighten your line through there. I don't have enough of a stout enough limited slip in the car to really do that on throttle. Never mind that it's a Honda and torque stuff or lack thereof. But with that having said, we have now made contact after kind of navigating a little traffic. We have our 986 Boxster S friend up here, who we kind of ended up in touch with several times through the weekend. We're coming onto the back straight for the first time here. You will note that I do not catch him in a straight line. I did talk to the gentleman in the paddock, and he did say that his motor is a little spicier than usual after having been rebuilt following an issue. But yeah, if anything, I would say he's probably pulling a little gap on me there at peak velocities. But one thing to watch as we're doing these laps here, as we're in touch, is we are taking a way different line through this last turn. He's kind of, I think, trail braking in earlier, so turning in earlier off the back straight and cut what I would say, like from an autocross standpoint, you kind of have your two choices, which is like cut distance or carry speed. I think he's cutting distance I'm trying to prioritize the exit and carry a little bit more speed through the turn in those cases. Now we're going to deal with a little traffic here real quick, but everybody, I will say to everyone's credit in this advanced group, if you happen to be watching this, I do thank you for playing nice. This is a pretty courteous group that we were driving with. Everybody was kind of, seemed for the most part aware of who was coming up behind them and how quickly, and issuing the point buys in good order. You know, this being the first session, everybody's kind of still feeling things out, so they're probably, you know, in the first session there were a couple of point buys that were probably a little later than one would hope for, but this is also track night in America, which is a self-assigned run group situation. So you say you're in the advanced group, you get in the advanced group. They do have you send a resume in, and they'll kind of flag things as they see fit. But so far in the 4 or 5 events I've done, I've had pretty good luck with people in the advanced groups at track night events feeling like they probably should be there. So he's, again, I've been behind the Boxster there for a little bit, so he points me by, has to do a big lift because, again, I think he's probably got me horsepowered here. Then we come down here, and this is what I want you to watch. Watch where he turns in relative to where I turn in. So obviously I'm coming up behind a slower car here a little bit, but I'm going deeper here and turning in. He's already in on the curb at this point, and then is kind of drifting off the curb and then coming back into the curb, where I only really touch that right-hand inside curb once as I'm unwinding to exit. Is that a better way of doing it? For my car, I felt that it was. The NSX doesn't like the kind of constant radius tightening turns too much, so the more I can kind of make a, you know, more of a friendly angle out of it, the better for my, you know, for my front end to stick. And then following that, I think definitely the turn 1-2 complex. I think I had, again, a little better idea there. And he was taking a similarly kind of tight entry line into 3, I noticed. And that was not working. And again, in relative terms, all other things being equal, that was not working for him. And I was definitely pulling a gap on him there. I will eschew any Gapplebee's jokes at this point, but we have pulled away from him a little bit at this, you know, by this point in the lap, such that we're not really going to be able to see too much of a comparison anymore. And I'm, you know, this being the first session, I only start going quicker from here, so we would not see him again in the first session. So we're going to finish out this lap, which I believe was my quickest in that first session, and then we will move on to session 2. So moving on to the second session, we kind of flipped the script here. Rather than me catching him in traffic, he ends up catching me in traffic. This is kind of, I believe this is our out lap here, or first flyer. I'm pretty sure it's our out lap here. And we're pointing by some modern Porsches here. That's a 718 Cayman and I believe that's a 911 GTS of all things. And then this guy missed my third point that I gave initially, but he was screened by the other 2 cars, so I can forgive him that. I was definitely trying to get those 3 guys around because I think they were all there together and looked like they were having a ton of fun. I'm going to do my best to stick with them, but you know, there's only so much I can do versus you know, 20+ year, what is it, probably 30-year newer you know, stuff from Stuttgart these days. But that has allowed our friend in the Boxster to catch up with us here. The only one of the Porsches that I wasn't too inclined to point by because, hey, you know, he pointed me by last session, so here we go again. And I'm on my way to getting up to speed here. One thing you'll note that I have changed in this section, or this session rather, and we'll see if I do it here and contradict myself, but I had been downshifting for this turn in that first session, and at some point got up to enough speed that I realized that that wasn't really worth it, and I was able to carry just as much speed through there in third gear and not have to shift as many times on the little short shoot. I did go back down to second here and through this section, and kind of an early tap on the brakes to get tight on this curve, and then start unwinding early on the exit. Now here again, if you watch the mirror, yes, I think he does close up on me a little bit in the braking zone. However, I don't think it's because he's braking later than I am. He's just taking a different line into the turn. And here I think the difference is, you can see how early he comes in there, and then he has to, his car kind of pushes out, and then he's got to turn back in again. And I don't even think he made the apex on that, on the inside right, which gave, that meant I had a much straighter shot out of there, and you can definitely tell. So as much as he closed up, he gave it all back on the front straight because of my better exit out of the last turn. Again, this is not touting me as such a great driver or something, but between those two techniques, I think one was definitely working a little better in a very similar car. But this is kind of what's interesting to me when you're doing HPDEs. Like, no, you know, you're not racing, but you can 100% watch what someone else does. Maybe they're doing something better and you learn from it, or maybe they're doing something different and you try it and you realize that you know, that's not on or doesn't work for your particular car. You know, and again, maybe he's got enough front tire on his car that he feels he can turn in early and just, you know, ride the rails around the curb there, cut that distance, and still get on the gas early enough. However, I would contend that he probably would have been turning quicker laps with just going with the late apex, your kind of bog standard, you know, curl it in slowly and then get the fast exit. Because then you're both you're staying full throttle more because you're not having to angle in here at the end of the straight, so you can use maximum braking. And then coming through here, again, I'm going to come in here and just kind of touch the curb there, and then I can already start to unwind and go back to full throttle. And that was actually not the best that I did that in this lap. And I think we're coming up on here. Yeah, so this lap that we're on now is my quickest of the weekend. So I'll shut up and let you just kind of watch this happen without any yakking. Our last session of the evening was under the lights. Now, PBIR is kind of unique in as far as what I would call small road courses are concerned in the United States, in that it is actually fully lit for night driving. Although, as you can see by our camera here, you know, the camera makes it look brighter than it actually was. Although I will say this GoPro with the settings I had is not too far off. It kind of gives you an idea, but you just have to imagine that anything that's kind of looks like anything that looks like it's in a little bit of a shadow on the video was pitch black in reality. So everything is a little bit lighter than it looks. So it was a little bit hard to find some of the apexes. Is where I wish my car You know, some NSXs, I think European models and maybe some Japanese models came with fog lights. That would have been really useful right now. You'll see lots of race cars actually will have lights that angle out as we get this Camaro. I don't know if that's a ZL1 or not past, but he was moving quick. They'll have, anyway, some modern race cars you'll see will have lights that actually angle out and down, so they kind of, so it'll light the curb up as they get close to it, and they can see where they're placing their car a little better that way. It was definitely a challenge. The other challenge I think I had through this session was understanding who it was that was behind me. Like, it was pretty obvious if somebody was close by, but once you kind of got into traffic and cars that you may have already passed were then still behind you, and you kind of had to make a decision of, okay, do I risk being that guy and not point somebody by behind me who might be faster, or am I going to end up just pointing somebody by who I've already passed, and then I have to repass them, and it gets awkward. So, I mean, that's definitely kind of something to consider. So here, I felt like I was being caught a little bit, and there were several Porsches in our group, and it was difficult to tell which Porsche headlights which Porsche headlights was I dealing with. And this was our Boxster friend here, so I was like, okay, whatever. It's a Porsche, he caught me, or looked like he was catching me, so this didn't happen by magic, I'll send him on a round. So then we're gonna, you know, pick up the pace here a little bit. You know, not to be, again, not to be that guy, but again, if he's maybe, you know, if he's past me, maybe he's doing something different now, and I need to follow him and figure out what he's doing different. Or maybe he's having the same problem as he definitely almost almost exited track left there coming out of that turn. I think everybody's having the same problem, kind of figuring out where your car is between the glare and limited lighting conditions. But yeah, again, here you can see he will definitely pull me on the straight. No question about that. I think that the both the time gap and the distance gap is getting a little bigger there under full throttle. And then we'll see again what happens in the braking zone here if I gain any of that back. So he's broken early, and he's taking, I think he went in a little bit later that time, but he's still doing his kind of double apex move here, where I'm using kind of the more single apex on that turn. And yeah, I mean, again, it's hard to say because as the speed picks up, the gap is going to build, but I'm 90% sure I was way closer coming out of that turn, or by the end of the front straight, than I was at the end of the back straight, or the middle of the back straight, I guess we'll call it for speed comparisons purposes. Excuse me, speed comparisons purposes. Now, I'm doing this all ad-lib, by the way. This is not scripted, me talking through this. I'm just watching this and talking. So I apologize for any gaffes or fumbles. But yeah, we're able to stay in touch with him again through this section pretty easy. I think, again, it's more of a, you know, I'm pretty much on a later apex almost everywhere than what he's doing. For what reason, I don't know. Again, we didn't have time to talk a whole lot in between sessions because they're, you know, shortish run groups. And there were some other people in the paddock that I ended up chatting with that were super nice. But again, I kind of made everybody's acquaintance. I would go and find this gentleman and talk to him a little while, and I guess he had been here before, but it had been a real long time, and then this being my first time here, with obviously, you know, having done my homework and some virtual practice and stuff like that ahead of time as well. But so here again, we've got our big difference in our last turn here. Although my foot's definitely kind of off the gas as far as a maximum effort lap is concerned here. If I've only done a 141 at my best at this point in time, that's, you know, how many seconds slower than my quickest on the weekend. And we're kind of getting back into it. I think we do end up pulling down a 136 point something in this last session at some point, but it was definitely not quite as easy to be consistent with it in the dark. Something, again, if I was going to go and do, I would love to go and do some endurance racing at some point in time. And that's something I would be kind of bearing in mind. Make sure your lens prescription is up to date, and the lighting on your car is, you know, is up to snuff, and then also just making sure that you know the track well enough that you're not relying on visual cues to place your car. You want to be able to kind of practice enough to where it gets reflexive if you're going to do something like that and have long sessions at night where you're then also having to deal with antagonistic traffic versus cooperative traffic like you might have in HPDE. But with that said, I am kind of tired of talking here, and this is kind of cool scenes at night, so I'm going to just shut up and let you guys watch the rest of this session for reference laps, and I will pick you back up here at the end. So as we wind down our last session, I'm going to thank you again for watching this episode of Just the Laps from Palm Beach International Raceway on Lap of the World. Again, if you enjoyed this, please drop a like down below, consider subscribing, and we will see you all in the next video, if not at the track.